Thank you, Neelkant and Brett, for that wonderful session on expense management. Good morning, one and all. Today, I'm going to be speaking about how we can help in plugging cost leakages and creating value, especially for the materials and the services spent. With the changing times, let's look at some of those factors which are there. Recently, there was a survey that was done around impact on businesses due to the secondary crisis such as COVID-19. The top two factors were financial and liquidity issues. And the second one was pretty interesting one, competitive disruption. In fact, to that effect, a few days back, Amway was in news announcing, say, they are moving from a high-touch to a high-tech organization. So this means each and every one is looking at how do they re-innovate themselves. In addition to these, if we look at the regulatory changes that have been there in the market, the top one is on the definition of MSME change that happened a few days back. And the second one is around e-invoicing, which the government announced a few months back and hopefully will be rolled out in the coming months. Dwelling a little deep into the MSME environment and what does it mean from business point of view. So if you look at today's situation, there are close to 6.6 crore MSMEs, out of which around 60 lakhs are registered on the GST side, and close to 3 to 3.5 lakhs of them into the manufacturing side of business as medium-sized businesses. With the change in definitions, you're going to have more MSMEs who are going to be there in the registered side, especially because of the schemes as well. If you have to be part of the schemes, you have to come into it. And additionally, with the definition changes, the number of MSMEs are going to increase. So the results of this are going to be also seen in customers' books in terms of their suppliers. The number of MSME suppliers are going to increase in most of the industries. Already, we have seen the regulation around the payment to be made to these suppliers. There's a 45 days regulatory, it's there. So this would mean in terms of the number of suppliers whom you have to make these payments within 45 days are going to increase. And the second one is especially the requirement of liquidity and ongoing rotation of capital being key for these sectors. When it comes to some of them who are strategic or key suppliers for you, example, someone who is providing a tooling kit, which is an important thing in your factory, then in order to mitigate the risk around these, you need to make sure you work pretty closely with those MSMEs to understand the business situations and positions as well. Moving on to the dynamics of the changing environment, what does it mean from day-to-day requirements? There's a lot more collaboration that is needed between the organization as well as suppliers as well, and also the internal departments, be it finance, be it procurement, be it planning, the project teams involved, especially with work from home still continuing in some of those areas and some of those businesses, and looks like for a few months it's going to be there. This is going to be all the more important. The demand and the supply fluctuations, how do you kind of manage it? Certain things are going to be short-term in nature as well. Doing a lot more work with lesser resources in terms of improving efficiencies in certain areas are going to become a norm. And more importantly, on the budgets, with say tighter budgets that are going to be there due to changing business environments, it's going to be important to make sure you use those budgets in the right direction, be it in terms of innovations, disruptive thinking there, as well as continuity of business. And in addition to those few points around how do you make sure you optimize your payment strategies? Everyone is speaking about cash flow today, but while you do that, make sure you look at those supplier positions as well as your brand value. In fact, there was a recent interesting article on how Panasonic has been doing it and did it during the crisis times. Last but not the least, while all these are taken care and the business runs, the complete audit trail, insights, and information available to make sure you are compliant, there aren't any misuse of funds or issues in the way things have been carried out. Moving on to how SAP Ariba can help your organization. There are three key areas where we believe we can provide value. The first one is around the cost control and compliance and how we can help you optimize, maximize your returns as well as reduce your cycle times on the process. The second one is around the vendor collaboration bit of it across the complete cycle, starting from the requirement to selection of suppliers, the contracting bit, to the downstream of the procure to pay operations, including collaboration with various internal parties. And the last one is around the working capital optimization, which has two aspects to it. One is around the discounting piece, how you can do dynamic discounting in addition to discounting terms of contracts itself. And the second one is supply chain finance to support some of your key suppliers who may be in need of cash while you may have challenges in paying them in advance or earlier. I'm going to take some examples for each of them to help you understand how we have been helping organizations. The first one is around cost control and compliance. There's a leading metal mining organization in India who is one of our customers. When they started the journey, they were looking for something to help them in cost optimization as well as bring in compliance and visibility in their business. So a lot of activities and actions that were done before between various parties, be it those people who are there at different sites of the mines or at the factory sites, as well as corporate procurement, finance, everything, most of them were through email channels, especially during the supply selection and the contract closure. Additionally, the communications with supplier, most often than not, were either emails from individual mailboxes or informal conversations over phone. That's where we help them redesign the approach and the strategy. We help them make sure their whole project management required for the big projects are taken care on a system, and all the collaboration relating to that, including activities, who's responsible, the timelines, and the documents associated with it are fully available in a single point and can be available for future use as well. In addition to that, during the sourcing events, how can you introduce new suppliers to bring in competition? In certain cases, to avoid risk, how can you also have new suppliers being brought in? Most importantly, after those events are done, when you've got a recording of information and insights over a period of time, what kind of analytics can be brought in? The data insights that can show whether the events were run with the right set of suppliers, whether certain things could have been done better, also for future planning in terms of introducing the right set of supplies and suppliers. So that's where the whole analytics piece helps. So the customer has been able to get almost like 5 to 10% average savings on most of the categories, in addition to the bigger aspect around visibility. In fact, their average savings has been around 8%. Moving on to the next one, on the vendor collaboration aspect. We spoke about this even when we were discussing about the change in the MSME sector. So I'm going to take an example of a customer who is a multinational conglomerate based out of India. They are into multiple businesses. They have successfully set up a shared service center for finance quite a few years back. It's been running fantastically well. So the invoices come into here. Then the scanning of those invoices happen. Post the scanning, the organization starts to do the processing. The processing agents take care of those invoice processing. And then wherever there are issues, they then work with various business units of the conglomerate to get those issues rectified. And in some cases, if it's a supplier issue, work with the supplier separately. And then after the invoice is processed, it goes through the necessary approval before being ready for payment. With the COVID-19 situation that happened a few months back, the biggest challenge that they faced was, how do I process such invoices? Where do those invoices go to? How can those be available for people to be taken up remotely for working because people were not there in office? Additionally, even scanning of papers was becoming difficult, especially when news was spreading around how COVID can be passed on between people. So, with these challenges, they wanted to relook at their strategy. How can they do things better and also more efficiently? And that's where we've been working with them to enable them to have that synchronized and collaborated process across the procure-to-pay operations, especially for the finance team with the suppliers. And at the same time, when the suppliers are digitally submitting those invoices, the insights and the rules that are there in the network to take care of all those match elements so that the exception handling and the can be reduced considerably and the first pass invoices can increase. This will result in a efficiency of people and more importantly, invoices being available, processed faster and available for payment on time. So the customer is also relooking at whether to look at, say, discount-based payments so that that can be a value add to be brought in this whole scenario. In fact, in one of those other examples of a customer, they made their whole accounts payable shared service center into a profit center through this whole aspect because there were enough invoices available and completed on time, due to which they were able to go back to the suppliers for discounted payment terms. So what a network provides here is that whole collaborative platform, visibility in this whole approach end to end, see, making sure the right conditions are being put in there, the intelligence brought in on that so that the verification match can be taken care. And four, supplier gets visibility on his invoices and where things are. So that's where the whole vendor collaboration is going to be a game changer, especially with the e-invoicing world as well. Moving on to the third one, which is around the cash flow management and the working capital management. Here I want to speak about an example of a pharma organization. They were looking at approach of how can they optimize their cash flow. So standardization of payment terms of one of those things which they looked at. But they wanted to go beyond that. How can they get value out of it? And that's where the whole thing, the concept of dynamic discounting helped them. We helped them in designing the approach of who are those suppliers, what kind of segmentation can be done to look at for those dynamic discounting, prioritize those even in the invoice processing for the cycle. And overall, they've been able to get an average annual savings of 25 crores plus the last 3 years. In addition to the value of this 25 crores, what is done is also the supplier relationship. It's kind of improved that supplier relationship quite a bit. That's shown up in their supplier surveys. The main reason for this is the visibility that the suppliers get. And automatically the suppliers have been able to decide if there are requirements of funds on their side and they have certain invoices which are ready for payment. They are able to go onto the platform and put in what is it they're ready for from a discount perspective. So that's where the whole concept of dynamic discounting comes in to add value. It is not that every supplier can be covered through this. And you may not have the real cash flow to take care of some of those big suppliers too, who may be in need of money. And that's where a combination of supply chain finance and dynamic discounting comes in. In terms of supply chain finance, we do have our collaboration with Standard Chartered Bank. So what we do as service together is not just provide a technology solution or the service. We also help customers to design this whole approach and make sure the value hits customers most. To sum it all, cost control and compliance, the whole thing around the collaboration with vendors, as well as the working capital optimization, all the three of them are key things even from short term, near term, as well as long term, in the change the business are going to see. Thank you, all of you. Now I'm going to request Abhishek Ghosh to speak a few words about what the PwC has been seeing with customers during this COVID scenario.